Hello dolls and welcome back to another video. On today's episode of my explaining every year from 1960 to 1979 series, we are going to talk about the year 1961. As always, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the politics and economics, but mainly focus on the fashion, the art, the film, and the music of the decade. So get comfortable and join me on a trip back to 1961. 1961, what a year. A time of immense change, political shifts, and the beginning of cultural movements that would reshape the world. As the Cold War tensions continued to escalate, John F. Kennedy's inauguration brought a sense of hope and a fresh direction to the United States. As he became the youngest president in US history, his ideals of progress and change resonated with many, symbolizing the dawn of a new era in politics. Meanwhile, the cultural landscape was undergoing a transformation. The rise of youth subcultures began to challenge the old norms, as music, fashion, and attitudes took on a more rebellious modern edge. The sound of rock and roll was evolving, and new genres like Motown were starting to break through, influencing generations to come. Fashion too was in transition, as old styles clung to the past while new, more youthful looks started to emerge. In film, Hollywood began experimenting with more realistic and provocative themes, while European cinema was pushing the boundaries of art and storytelling. From political shifts to social movements, 1961 was truly a year of change and a precursor to the explosive transformation that would define the 1960s. As always, I'm mainly going to focus on the US and Great Britain, but I'm also going to touch on a couple of other countries in this video. 1961 kicked off with a bang. John F. Kennedy was sworn in as the 35th President of the United States, marking a new era of hope and idealism. At just 43, he was the youngest president in US history, and his famous inauguration speech echoed a message of change and challenge. He famously said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." His presidency symbolized a fresh start, promising civil rights reforms, economic growth, and a stronger international presence, especially in the context of the Cold War. 1961 was also a year of international tensions. The Berlin Wall went up in August, physically dividing East and West Berlin, symbolizing the deepening division between communism and democracy. This also symbolized the start of the dangerous Cold War standoff between the US and the Soviet Union. Just a few months earlier, the Bay of Pigs invasion had been a disaster, and JFK's efforts to contain communism continued to shape US foreign policy. It was a year marked by fear and uncertainty, but also by America's determination to protect its ideals. On the home front, 1961 saw the continuation of the post-war economic boom. The average household income was around $5,500, with most households still living on a single income, and the cost of living remaining relatively low. I've decided to draw out the development of prices in the US by comparing 3 items in every single video: a movie ticket, a loaf of bread, and a new house. A loaf of bread was around 20 cents, a movie ticket would set you back around 69 cents, and a new house started at around $12,500. For many, the 1960s promised a time of prosperity, though the economic gap between the rich and the poor was still very noticeable. The fashion landscape of 1961 marked a subtle yet notable shift as it started to embrace looser silhouettes while still celebrating the natural female figure. Women's clothing in this year saw a slight relaxation in the waistline, with a move towards less constrictive fits, while still maintaining a nod to shape. While fit and flare styles, the hallmark of 1950s fashion, remained popular among younger women, high fashion houses began to ease up on the rigidity of silhouettes, setting the stage for more freedom and comfort in the years ahead. Skirts in 1961 retained their narrow shape and were often paired with boxy jackets and tunic tops, which introduced a new dimension of women's wardrobes. This is kind of what I'm wearing today, besides the fact that I decided to wear pants, but I really love this little blazer. It's from the early 1960s. The big buttons and just the really boxy, shapeless cut truly stands for the year 1961. These looser fitted tops were often left loose or belted for those inclined towards a more form-fitted style. This style, which generally ended at the hip, was integral to the new style of suit, where a boxy jacket was combined with a loose-fitting skirt, signaling a breakaway from the more tightly structured looks of the previous decade. Coats followed a similar direction, becoming more boxy, relaxed, and slouchy, with designs that curved downwards to create a softer silhouette. Many coats featured hidden or side pockets, adding providing a functional yet stylish look. Evening wear also saw innovations, with skirts taking on a new shape, something that could be described as a round bubble effect, which became popular particularly for evening dresses. Necklines were widened into boat necks, offering a more open and relaxed look, and often enhanced with features like standing collars, bows, and even furs, especially in coats. I have a coat just like that. I'm gonna put up a picture right here. It's this beautiful rich red wool, and it does have that applicated fur collar that was just so popular at the time. These coats were really shapeless, but after the 1950s, where everything was so form-fitting, people really adored these looser new cuts, and it was seen as truly modern. The combination of wide necklines and sloping shoulders lengthened the neck, a look further enhanced by chic short hairstyles. Long hair, when worn, was often styled into ponytails, complementing the clean, elegant lines of the clothing. The balance of bare throats and arms contributed to the youthful aesthetic emerging in fashion. I tucked all of my hair back to achieve pretty much exactly that look today. I do really like it, and these kind of haircuts were so new and modern. After the 1950s had this big focus on femininity, the 1960s broke away from that, and a lot of women were embracing these new, shorter hairstyles. Skirts were getting just a touch shorter, though still modest, and the bust became more pronounced with cleverly placed darts and smaller armholes. Meanwhile, the Beatnik style, which had been associated with a more underground countercultural look, became commercialized in 1961. Women embraced clam digger pants, tightly fitted at the ankle, worn with tunic tops, jumper dresses, and ballet slippers. These elements, which had once been seen as edgy, now became more widely accepted, and even considered chic, though still in darker, understated tones. However, in a nod to the changing times, the Beatnik look was given a brighter, more polished update, often with matching twin sets. Perhaps the most iconic fashion moment of 1961 was the release of the iconic Breakfast at Tiffany's film, where Audrey Hepburn became a fashion icon. Her wardrobe, largely designed by Givenchy, showcased many of the defining elements of the 1961 style: wide necklines, chignons, and loose tunic dresses, which would influence women's fashion for years to come. Her portrayal of Holly Golightly solidified her status as a style muse, and the film became synonymous with elegance and simplicity. Another key symbol of 1961 fashion was the pillbox hat, which was popularized by none other than Jackie Kennedy. The First Lady's simple yet graceful style, characterized by neat dresses and pillbox hats, set the tone for high society fashion, reflecting the elegance of the era. 1961 marked a turning point in the evolution of the 1960s, where the loose silhouettes that would dominate much of the decade began to emerge more fully. While there were still elements of the previous decades, like structured skirts and tailored suits, women's fashion was embracing a more relaxed, youthful look. Pants and shorts made their way into summer wardrobes with a chic, modern feel. And the Beatnik style was reimagined in brighter colors paired with coordinated twin sets. For those looking for a more feminine approach to 1961 fashion, sleeveless dresses with clean, simple lines were highly favored. The relaxed shapes, shorter skirts with attention to bare arms and throats, contributed to a sense of ease, which would be explored further in the mid-1960s. The year also brought the Little Nothing dress, a simple yet elegant shift dress that reflected the relaxed, youthful silhouette that was emerging in the early 1960s. The term Little Nothing dress refers to the minimalist style. It was often sleeveless or short-sleeved with a loose, boxy fit that was free of elaborate details or embellishments. Its simplicity was a stark contrast to the more structured, figure-hugging styles of the 1950s. This dress was designed to allow for ease of movement and comfort, while still offering a sleek and fashionable appearance. Square-toed shoes and beehive hairstyles were also key elements of the time, with the latter adding volume to the height of women's hairstyles. Men's fashion in 1961 blended sharp, classic elements with a more relaxed, youthful style. The Ivy League look was still prominent, with skinny tight suits with narrow lapels and button-down shirts, maintaining their popularity. However, there was a noticeable shift towards more relaxed, casual, and individualized pieces, influenced by the rise of rock and roll. Cardigan sweaters and corduroy slacks became everyday staples, while houndstooth sports coats added a fashionable touch to a man's wardrobe. Pinch front fedoras and hairstyles like ducktails and pompadours made bold statements, with men styling their hair in voluminous, slicked-back shapes. Harrington jackets, pork pie hats, and basket weave loafers completed the look, reflecting a move towards less formality and more self-expression in men's fashion. In 1961, the music scene was a dynamic blend of innovation, change, and the continuing rise of new genres. While the British invasion was still a few years away, American rock and roll was going through a major evolution. Elvis Presley was firmly established as the king of rock, and hits like Surrender kept him at the top of the charts. However, alongside Elvis' dominance, other artists were making their own mark. Ray Charles, a pioneering figure in soul and rhythm and blues, was enjoying mainstream success in 1961 with songs like Hit the Road Jack and Georgia on My Mind, which blended gospel, jazz, and blues influences into what would later be called soul music. James Brown, already an influential figure in the world of R&B, began to develop his unique high-energy style that would later come to define funk music. Motown, the iconic Detroit-based label, was just beginning to emerge as a major force in the music industry. The Supremes, Martha and the Vandellas, and the Miracles were among the first stars of the label, producing hits that would shape the sound of the 60s. The Motown sound would soon become a genre in its own right, with its smooth production, catchy melodies, and socially aware lyrics becoming the soundtrack of the decade. On the West Coast, the rise of surf rock began to take a hold, with the Beach Boys leading the way. Their hit Surfing USA, released in 1961, captured the carefree California lifestyle with its catchy melodies, high-energy rhythms, and sun-soaked imagery. This surf rock movement, which would dominate the early 1960s, provided a stark contrast to the more serious, emotional tones of Motown and soul. But both styles would coexist and define much of the era's cultural soundscape. In addition to these major genres, other significant musical developments included the continued popularity of the doo-wop, the rise of folk music, with artists like Bob Dylan gaining attention, and the growing influence of jazz, which was moving into experimental and modal forms, thanks to artists like Miles Davis. The diversity of genres in 1961 set the stage for the musical revolution that would unfold in the next years, with artists pushing boundaries and creating the soundtrack of a changing world. On the big screen, 1961 marked the beginning of New Hollywood. The Academy Award-winning film West Side Story was a cultural landmark, bringing the energy of Broadway to film, with its stunning choreography and themes of love, identity, and race. But there was also the gritty, raw realism of films like The Hustlers, starring Paul Newman, which portrayed a darker, more complex view of American life. In Breakfast at Tiffany's, Audrey Hepburn as the glamorous and complex Holly Golightly whisked audiences away and turned the film into a cultural milestone, influencing fashion and film for years to come. Meanwhile, European cinema continued to push boundaries, with Federico Fellini's La Dolce Vita further solidifying Italy's influence on global filmmaking. So what does 1961 really add up to? It was a year that bridged the old and the new, a time of significant political change, a shift in fashion, and the birth of movements in music and film that would define the next decade. Whether it was the hope of a new president, the rise of Motown, or the bold fashion choices on the streets, 1961 helped set the stage for the rest of the 60s. It wasn't just a year, it was the beginning of a revolution in culture, music, style, and in the way the world saw itself. Tomorrow we'll explore 1962, a year of political tensions, musical evolution, and iconic film moments that shaped the course of the decade. And that brings me to the end of this video. Because this is Vlogmas, I'm still opening my tea advent calendar with you every single day, and I already have one brewing right here that I'm so excited to have. This one has apple, hibiscus, and currant, so we'll see. Also, in case you didn't saw last year's Vlogmas, this is one of my favorite vintage 60s style mugs. The top comes off, and then you're just left with a nice cup of tea. I like it. It's not as fruity as I would have expected, which is good because I do like these kind of like darker blends when it comes to tea. It's a great cup of tea. I hope you had yours enjoying this video. If you enjoyed the video, I would love you to give it a thumbs up and maybe even share it with a friend. It supports me, it supports the channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe and come back tomorrow for the year 1962. For this year's Vlogmas, I'm breaking down one new year every single day, and I would love to have you with me on this journey. Every 5 videos, I'm gonna take a break and bring you a classic Vlogmas vlog, but that's not for another couple of days, so be sure to come back tomorrow for another video filled with 1960s fashion, music, and art. I hope you have a beautiful day. Go out, enjoy the sunshine and hopefully the snow. Take yourself some time to focus on you and your mental health today, and I will catch you in tomorrow's video. Bye, dolls!